Hello ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining me today. Today's article is from Gateway Pundit dated November 5, 2022, by Jim Hoft. Here is the title. Biden delivers ominous warning from his globalist puppet masters. The narrative has been set for election chaos and political violence. Now, I have to say that the Democrats and their puppet masters, the elite, and the CCP know that the red tsunami is coming in just 4 days. But they have been playing yet another coup, attempting to steal this election from the American people. I think this article covers this quite well. Back to the article. Biden delivers ominous warning from his globalist puppet masters. Vote for us or else. Joe Biden, in his primetime speech earlier this week, again painted the November 8 midterm election as a referendum, not on his policies, but on democracy itself. Listening to the rhetoric, one can envision how things might play out next week. We end up with many races that are too close to call on election night. The vote counting lasts for days. Now, I am not a betting man, but I would bet the farm that this is definitely going to happen. Continuing on, deep state-controlled political operatives, instead of urging calm, throw rhetorical fire onto the political powder keg of distrust they've spent the last several years cultivating, and then we're off to the races. Violence ensues. Biden's November 2 speech followed up on the same themes presented in his dark September 1 Battle for the Soul of America speech. He said a vote for Make America Great Again Republicans on November 8 represents the death knell for our beloved democracy. Now let me pause shortly. Biden, the false president, the one who got the most votes in United States history, the 81 million man, who said he was going to bring our country together, stated that the real 81 million man supporters represent a bell being rung for the death of our country. Amazing. The Democrats, the elite, the mainstream media, academia, communist China, and Hollywood truly believe that a statement like this is going to bring our country back together again. The stupidity of this goes far beyond reason. But let's return to the article. Democracy is on the ballot, Biden said, a phrase that the CIA's Mockingbird media has dutifully repeated over and over as if to drum it into the zombies' heads. Whenever you hear the entire corporate media repeating the exact same talking points, you know it's a propaganda psyop in the making. They did it with COVID. They did it with the vaccines. Not a single corporate media outlet strayed from the script, and that's always a red flag. To dissent from the corporate narrative on masks, vaccines, and war with Russia makes you a danger to democracy. No sane American president could speak in such dire terms. No sane president who makes his own decisions instead of receiving orders from an already entrenched shadow dictatorship could talk about democracy like Biden does. Biden's chief of staff, Ron Klain, spoke to the Mockingbird media after Biden's speech this week and told us that we have received our one final warning from the supreme dictator. I kid you not. Watch the first minute and a half of the below video.
I'm not the only one who sees it. Recent polls have shown that overwhelming majority of Americans believe our democracy is at risk, that our democracy is under threat. They too see that democracy is on the ballot this year.
It's President Joe Biden speaking last night at Union Station in Washington, just a few blocks from the United States Capitol. Let's bring in White House Chief of Staff Ron Klain. Ron, thanks for being with us this morning. Tell us about the decision to make that speech about democracy, about what's on the line 5 days from now in your estimation, and when you chose to do it, the timing.
Well, the president's been talking about the threat to our democracy since he launched his campaign way back in 2019, and again on January 6th, and again in September in Philadelphia at Independence Hall. And I think the president decided a few days ago that it was important to issue one final warning on this issue, to make very clear, to leave no doubt, that we have people out there still peddling the big lie, people now raising the issue of election denial in this election.
So here's the message. Vote for Democrats or risk it all. Our very democracy is at stake. They have no rational argument for why we should vote for them. Inflation is out of control, the border remains open, pornography remains in the schools, crime is rampant, fuel and food shortages are mounting, and our freedoms are evaporating. In order to distract from these issues, they must frame next week's election in simple emotional terms. It's us or those women-hating, trans-hating, Make America Great Again extremists. Let me interject here again. How does a rational, clear-thinking adult, and by adult I mean those who have matured enough through life that have a good cognition of reality, how can they come to the conclusion that people who love life and want to give it to babies become women haters? And don't just give me some communist narrative. We all know just how much communists hate babies. There is no way you can answer this without showing your hatred for men, women, babies, and the family. I really don't know how you came to such a conclusion, and I don't care. Just get off my planet. Quickly. And we don't hate trans people. There are a lot of trans Make America Great Again people who love life, family, and country. Again, I ask, how did they come to this conclusion? I think a lot of it comes from the elites. Returning to the article, and if too many of you vote for those extremists, we might need to take extreme measures to stop the transition away from our brand of pseudo-democracy. To their credit, even some Democrats see through the mirage. As communicated in an article by NBC News, Biden takes heat from his own party over democracy speech. Remember, this is the same president who last year told us he was losing patience with those of us who refuse to get a certain pharmaceutical product jabbed into our bodies. There's more than meets the eye here, folks. Why have Biden's handlers, the deep state shadow government, reported instead of asking for our vote? It feels like they are ordering us to pull the lever for their candidates. That's not how it's supposed to work in America, unless the old America, the constitutional republic, is already gone. Replaced with some dictatorship's own definition of democracy? I guess we will soon find out. To thinly veiled threats against their political opponents? So, in summary, when I listen to Biden's speech, what I'm hearing is this: they are giving us one final warning, that if we turn out in droves to vote for their opposition, they will have to do something drastic, perhaps remove the pretense of democracy, the delusion that democracy still exists. Unleash hell's fury. I hope I'm proven wrong next week, but I have felt for some time that we already live under a dictatorship, a soft dictatorship perhaps, but a dictatorship nonetheless. The defining characteristic of a dictatorship is that it does not go quietly. It does not allow itself to be voted out of power. Those holding positions of dictatorial power don't see their roles as servanthood, but rather as privilege and entitlement. They don't serve the people, as they see them, they rule over them. Why? Because they can. They control the armies and the police forces, in this case, the National Police Force, which is the FBI. Man, this is right on target. And if we try to resist, meaning we vote in such numbers that even their built-in systemic cheating is unable to compensate for it, then they will call out the military wing of the Democrat Party, which is Antifa, and the FBI will look the other way. At least that's the not-so-subtle warning we are getting. Again, I hope I'm wrong. But either way, we must not be intimidated into staying home. We must call their bluff and turn out massively on Tuesday, exercising people's power at the polls. Every dictatorship has a political wing and a military wing. Hitler had his brown shirts. Lenin had his Cheka, and Stalin had his KGB. East Germany had its Stasi. Iran has its Revolutionary Guard. It's no different with the American dictators. They have the FBI, Antifa, and other paramilitary units at the ready. Again, let me interject. Nancy Pelosi did not want the local police to come to the rescue of her homosexual husband. She did not want the world to know this. So she called on the Capitol Police, another Democratic Party enforcement wing, to respond. They did not respond in time. If they had, we would have never known the secrets of the Pelosi family. Let's continue with the Gateway Pundit article. Biden and his chief of staff warned us this week that they have something in store for us if we don't accept them as our permanent overlords. Every dictatorship needs a boogeyman so it can claim to be protecting the people from impending danger. For the regime in Washington, the boogeyman outside the gates is Russia, and the boogeyman inside the gates is what they now call extreme MAGA. Both, they say, present a grave danger to our democracy. It's a lie, of course, but it's all they have. Biden even tried to tie the attack on Nancy Pelosi's husband to the boogeyman, which is kind of funny given that Paul Pelosi's attacker, David DePape, is a homeless, gay, drug-using, nudist, illegal alien from Canada. Doesn't exactly fit the bill of Make America Great Again. While warning about violence coming from the right, the Washington deep state, the shadow dictatorship, has already started its own wave of political violence against conservative Americans. Take, for example, the case involving Illinois Republican gubernatorial candidate Darren Bailey. Speaking with reporters at ABC 7 News in Chicago, Bailey said he and his family had received disturbing voicemail threats, prompting him to cancel campaign events. The Chicago Sun-Times reported that the threats prompted schools affiliated with Bailey and his family in southern Illinois to be placed on soft lockdown. Bailey reported the calls to the police, who traced them to 21-year-old Scott Lennox. According to the Cook County State Attorney's Office, Lennox has been charged with 1 felony count each of threatening a public official and making harassing communications. Lennox allegedly threatened to torture and then assassinate Bailey, and later bragged to friends about making the death threats. Blaze Media reports that prosecutor Lorraine Scaduto said, Lennox was with friends at a bar on Friday when a political ad aired on TV that infuriated him. Meanwhile, in New Hampshire, a Republican Senate candidate was grazed by a protester's punch, thrown before Wednesday's debate with incumbent Democrat Senator Maggie Hassan. Donald Bolduc, a retired Army general, was assaulted at St. Anselm College's New Hampshire Institute of Politics before his debate with Hassan. The Epoch Times reported that Bolduc mentioned the incident near the end of the November 2nd debate. In yet another case of political violence stemming from the left, the family home of Republican congressional candidate Pat Harrigan in Hickory, North Carolina, was sprayed with gunfire. The shooting happened last week, when Harrigan's parents and children were in the house, WBTV News reported. Harrigan wrote in a tweet, "A bullet and death threats aren't enough to knock this Green Beret off that mission." Harrigan and others have speculated that the attack may have been inspired by a television ad paid for by Jeff Jackson, Harrigan's Democrat opponent, that was filmed in front of Harrigan's home. Are you beginning to see the pattern here? And that's not all. LifeSite News reports that since the overturning of Roe v. Wade last summer, violence against pro-lifers has been 22 times higher than violence against abortion advocates. Hundreds of pro-life crisis pregnancy centers have been burned, bombed, defaced, and vandalized, with no arrests made by the FBI. Could these acts of left-wing political violence be a harbinger of things to come, a mere foreshadowing of worse violence on the horizon? I don't know, but we must prepare for the possibility, because a house divided cannot stand, and no dictatorship allows itself to be voted out of power. Do not fall into the trap that has been laid, where this shadow dictatorship made up of traitors and globalist predators goads us into the same violent behavior of which they are guilty. That's what they want, both sides shooting at each other. Keep your cool. Stay calm. Prepare to survive the chaos with enough food, water, and means of self-protection to ride out what pretends to be a rough period for America. Our enemy is not Democrats or any flesh and blood but rather a world system inspired by Satan himself. And most importantly, pray to our mighty God for spiritual strength, courage, wisdom, and discernment, so that we might come out on the other side of this chaos able to live in peace, free of persecution by these psychopathic powers of evil in high places. LeoHoman.com is 100% reader-supported and 100% independent of the government and its corporate partners. And his article is right over the target. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your listening and support.